Hello everyone and welcome back! In this lesson we are going to implement the logout functionality where we will be terminating the user session. Now remember, the session ID is stored in a cookie that at this moment it's an HTTP only cookie. So we cannot delete the cookie on the client side. If we want to erase the session ID, we want to send a message to the server that the user has just logged out. The server will then need to remove the session from its memory so that it's no longer considered a valid session. So let's quickly implement this logic. We're going to head over here to the Logout menu, which is available here at the level of the application component. The Logout button is calling a method called Logout as well, and this is not yet implemented. The way that we are going to do this is we are going to call the authentication service. We are going to create a new logout method that is going to return an observable. So let's implement this. We are going to go to the authentication service. We are going to call logout. This is going to return an observable that we will have to subscribe in order to trigger the logout. Let's then implement the logout logic. So we are going to switch over here to the authentication service, and we're going to be doing an HTTP post call to the backend. Let's already specify the return type of this method, so it's going to be an observable of any, and we are going to be using the HTTP client service. We are going to call post on it. We are going to hit the /API/logout service that we have not yet implemented, so we're going to do that in a second. This post call will have no body, and we are going to, as usual, apply share replay to it to avoid any sort of duplicate logout calls at the level of the client that might happen accidentally. And we could already return this, but after we log out, we still want to update the data of the user because the previously logged in user is no longer logged in. So we are going to emit the anonymous user data instead. So that, for example, after we click logout, now the logout button should be hidden and the login and sign up buttons should be displayed instead. So in order to do that, we are going to emit here via the subject, the private subject of the authentication service. We are going to be emitting the anonymous user. With this in place, let's now implement the server part of the logout logic. We're going to go here to the server folder and we're going to create here a logout route TypeScript file. And in this file, we're going to define the skeleton of this logout route handler. So this is an express middleware handler that takes a request and a response. We are going to plug it in here to the server API definition. We are going to say that if the user hits the /API/logout route and it's a post request, we are going to be using this express middleware that we have just defined. So we are going to say that in case of a post, we are going to handle the request using this logout function that we have just created. Let's now then implement the logout function. The logic for this route is going to be very simple. First, we need to identify the user that is being logged out. So we are going to extract the session ID from the cookies map, and using it, we are going to first go to the session store and we are going to destroy this session. So we are going to create a new method on session store. We're going to call it simply destroy session, and we're going to be passing it in this session ID. So we have just imported here the session store. Now with Alt Enter, we are going to automatically create this method. We're going to define this argument as a string. And the implementation of this method is going to be very simple. We are going to access the sessions map. We are going to take the session ID and we are going to simply delete this property from this object. This way we are effectively clearing the session ID from the session store. Now that the session is destroyed, the second thing that we need to do in this logout handler is to clear the cookie. So only the server can clear this cookie. We are going to clear the session ID cookie. This is going to send back a header that is going to give instruction to the browser to clear this cookie. So this cannot be done again at the level of JavaScript on the client side because it's an HTTP only cookie. We are going to send back to the client, we are going to send back a response with an empty body, and we are going to say that the status is 200 OK, meaning that the logout request was processed successfully. And with this in place, we are ready to test the logout logic. So we have reloaded both the server and the client, the Angular CLI and the REST API server. We are not logged in currently, so we are going to create a new user. We create sign up. We have effectively created the new user. Now we have access to the lessons data. And if we now click logout, let's see what happens. We are going to inspect the network tab just to see the logout post request. We still have access here to the data, but if we log out, we are going to see that we had here a post request that was made. Let's have a look at the responses. So here on set cookie, we have effectively cleared the session ID. We can see that the data is no longer visible. So the data has been hidden. So the new user data for the anonymous user was propagated to the whole application, because also now we have here the sign up and the login buttons visible again. So everything is working as expected. Let's now improve a little bit the sign up experience. So as we have seen, whenever we click the sign up component, we are staying on the same sign up screen. So what we would like to do here is, if the sign up is successful, so the new user was created, let's redirect the user to the lesson screen automatically. So in order to do that, we are going to need the router here injected at the level of the constructor. Let's then inject the router, and with the router in place, we are going to be able to redirect the user. Let's simply call the router and we are going to do a navigation by URL. Let's go to the root of the application, which is going to be redirected to /lessons. So if we open here the router configuration, we can see that the empty path, which is the root path, is going to be redirected to /lessons. So let's try this new logic. We are going to reload our application. When the application is reloaded, let's quickly create here a new user. Now with the new user, if we click sign up, we are going to be redirected directly to the lesson screen as expected. And this concludes the implementation of the logout functionality. So we have sign up new user and we have logout working. Let's now implement the login functionality.